Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're jumping into a really fascinating intellectual detective story. Seriously, we're heading back 2,000 years to solve a legal paradox that puts two sacred laws head-to-head, with a real person's fate just hanging in the balance right there at the gate of the ancient temple.
All right, so here's our game plan for cracking this case. We'll start by setting the scene, this ritual at a crossroads. Then, we're going to look at what seems like an obvious loophole. After that, we'll follow the ancient rabbis as they investigate some physical workarounds. From there, we'll decode a crucial clue, figure out the hierarchy of laws, and finally, we'll solve this ancient puzzle together. So our whole story revolves around a leper. Now, in the context of ancient Jewish law, this person has just gone through a long, tough purification process. They are this close to being fully restored, but there's one last ritual they have to do, a guilt offering at the temple. And this is exactly where they get stuck, caught in what looks like an impossible legal trap.
And that right there is the big question for our entire investigation today. What in the world do you do when two fundamental, divinely given rules are in direct opposition? This isn't just some dusty old thought experiment, it has a very real impact on the person who's stuck waiting at that gate.
So here's the standoff. You've got the unmovable object versus the irresistible force. On one side, you have the rule of purity. Because his final purification step isn't done yet, the leper is still considered ritually impure. That means he's absolutely positively forbidden from setting foot inside the temple courtyard. But on the other side, there's the rule of the offering. For his sacrifice to even count, he has to physically place his hands on the animal. And that action has to happen inside the very same courtyard. He has to be in a place he cannot go. It's a total paradox.
So the first thing any good detective would ask is, okay, isn't there an easy way out of this? Can't he just, reach in? And this leads us to the first and most obvious potential solution we have to investigate, the loophole. This brings us to a super important legal idea, bia b'mixat, which basically means partial entry. Now, the whole case could hinge on this one concept. I mean, if just sticking your hands into a forbidden area doesn't legally count as entering it, then hey, problem solved. The leper just stands outside, reaches his hands over the line, does the ritual, and we can all go home. But is it really that simple? Well, the ancient texts actually give us our first huge clue. A source called the Tosafah describes this exact ritual, and it says the leper places his hands on the animal at the Nicanor gate, which is outside the main courtyard, while the animal is slaughtered inside. The fact that these two things are described as separate actions is pretty strong evidence that the simple fix of just reach in wasn't allowed. This backs up the opinion of a sage named Ulla, who argued that, yep, partial entry is legally considered entry, so the loophole is officially closed. Okay, so if a simple legal loophole is off the table, what about a physical one? This is where the rabbis start thinking like engineers, trying to figure out if there are any purely spatial solutions to this problem. But they pretty quickly hit a bunch of dead ends. So, 3 theories get thrown out there, but they're all shot down pretty fast. First, the spatial problem. A sage named Rav Yosef points out that this particular offering has to be slaughtered in the northern part of the courtyard, which is just way too far to reach from the gate. Okay, so what about an architectural fix? Someone suggests, why not just cut a new hole in the wall closer to the spot? Well, that gets rejected immediately. The temple's design was seen as a divine blueprint handed down straight from God and totally unchangeable. No renovations allowed.
And this is where the investigation takes a really brilliant turn. Since the legal and physical workarounds are exhausted, the rabbis realize the answer might not be in the law books or the architecture, but in the very nature of the action itself. The focus shifts from the where to the how.
And believe it or not, it all comes down to this one tiny phrase found in the description of the ritual. The hand placing has to be done with all his force. This little clue changes everything. The technical term for this is semicha, the placing of the hands. And Rav Yosef argues that the requirement to do it with all his force is absolutely key. See, you can't just gently rest your fingertips on the animal, you have to really lean in, putting your full body weight into it. This physical act would mean bringing your head and most of your upper body into the courtyard, which makes a simple partial entry of just the hands physically impossible. You can't just reach in, you have to lean in.
Right, so this is the crucial point. We've eliminated the easy loophole, and we've gotten rid of the physical workarounds. The conflict is real, and it's unavoidable. So the only way forward now is to analyze the laws themselves. When sacred rules collide like this, one of them has to have priority.
The rabbis now have to figure out a legal hierarchy. So here it is, our legal showdown. We've got 3 laws, all competing in the same space at the exact same time. The purity law says, stay out. The Zevachim law, the hand placing, says come in. And then there's a third one, the immediacy law, that says the slaughter has to happen right after the hand placing with no interruption. So, which one is going to give?
This is the intellectual climax, and it's laid out by a sage named Rav Atta. He realizes the answer is all about the source of each law. So he tests 2 theories. Theory 1, what if hand placing is the main Torah law, and that makes the immediacy rule less important? Well, that doesn't work because other verses link them together as equals. So he flips it. In theory 2, he suggests that while hand placing and immediacy are both top-tier laws from the Torah, from most offerings, the leper's case is a special exception. For the lepers specifically, the hand placing rule is of a lower rabbinic authority, not from the Torah itself. And that distinction, that is the key that unlocks the entire puzzle.
And just like that, with that brilliant logical reversal, all the puzzle pieces just click into place. The rabbis have their solution, the conflict is resolved, and the case of the leper at the gate is finally officially closed. And here's the verdict. The truly elegant solution is that one of these conflicting rules just isn't as binding as the others, but only in this one specific situation. The requirement for the leper to place his hands on the offering comes from a rabbinic source, not directly from the Torah, and that gives it just enough flexibility to resolve the whole paradox.
So let's look at the final judgment. What gets upheld? First, the absolute holiness of the temple courtyard. The purity law stands firm. The leper cannot enter. The immediacy law, which links sacred actions, that's also upheld. So what's the one thing that gets modified? The one flexible rabbinic rule. The leper performs his hand placing at the gate, and then the animal is brought inside for slaughter. It's a sequence that respects all the higher-level Torah laws.
And this brings us completely full circle. A final comment from the sage Ravina really clarifies why that first, obvious loophole was never really an option. He explains that while partial entry isn't a capital crime punishable by spiritual excision, it's still a serious, punishable offense that warrants lashes. The law is the law, even if it's just by an arm's length.
And so this is what we're left with. This incredible, detailed, deep dive, this detective-like hunt for a solution for one person at one gate. It shows a system that's trying so hard to be both consistent and compassionate. And it really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What does this intense focus on a single, seemingly obscure detail tell us about the nature of justice, the value of precision, and the intricate workings of faith itself?